I'm trying to think on how to situate the recent events where an obviously vulnerable person was attempting suicide in Malta, and the accidental citizen media which happened when, as it happens, a Times journalist was walking by and filmed, let's say, a mob or ordinary citizens with smartphones filming the spectacle. The reaction on social media, of course, has been very venomous and moralistic and shocked, from people saying, that's why I left the country. There is something morally bankrupt about the country that does this. To other people saying that these people are not representative of us. This is the worst of humanity. I want to try and pivot this to two different aspects, I think. One is the role of the media, the mainstream media, in this. We got to know about this because somebody employed by mainstream media happened to A, film what was going on, B, go to the editor with content, and the editor made, I think, two executive decisions. One is to immediately write about it, but also, more significantly, is to post the raw video footage online. And that is something which we're not quite used to, I think, for a number of reasons. One is the potential harm, even to the person who is in a vulnerable state. We normally don't report suicides in this country. It's just something that happens. It's the unknown narrative. But also the idea that there are people who are identifiable, who are doing what we all do when we have a mobile phone. In other words, we don't just use it to take pictures of our food or to film each other. Occasionally things happen and you point the phone to the subject, in this case, somebody very vulnerable. So the narrative now is starting to become very different. A, it's about the role of the media, the mainstream media responsibility. You know, should the Times have put the video there online because of the spectacle side of it, even potentially the clickbait potential of it? Was this news when, until recently, suicide was not classified as news? The more interesting, and I think it's something which needs to be discussed, the other more interesting part and the more painful part is what happens to human beings like you and me when you give them a mobile phone. But also what happens to a country that people with access to a mobile phone, instead of using it to potentially call for help, to help somebody who is clearly in a very vulnerable position, instead to use that phone and film it, but also quite unabashedly just, talk about the spectacle, and people saying, no, this is not for real. No, this person doesn't really want to self-harm. In fact, he's only just doing it for attention. In fact, he might only be doing this to get the media spectacle around it because he never really wanted to jump in the first place. So we can go from something is very wrong in the island state of Malta and bundle all of that. We could also say this is a case of, back to, I think the kind of things which interest people like me, is a place where people have not been educated from the moment they open their eyes that these things that we carry with us, these devices, these screens, have to be managed responsibly. Or else you could get very depressed and say, this is what happens in a state where anybody can say and do whatever they like, including film the most horrible atrocities. And this was one which was about to happen and mercifully didn't happen. I think it's an interesting dilemma we're in, but it's also representative of our times, I think. I think there are many questions we also need to ask, okay, about those people who were there at the moment filming this, the journalist who was walking by and filmed this, who was doing his job. I mean, I will sit on the fence and say that definitely the journalist who filmed it was doing his job, for sure. The editor who then published it took an editorial decision, and probably with the fourth estate in mind, that the newspaper is there as a watchdog over sometimes the moral fiber of the country. And I think that was the decision at that time. I think the other thing to consider is what happens to us when you give us access to, 21st century multimedia devices, and we can put them to good use or to terrible use.